this recording. I think it must be. Hi, Pat. Virginia. Georgia. So I want to tell you this story. About a young girl growing up in a very religious community, a community where religion pervades everything. And so, if you like, law and religion within their own culture is the same thing. And, well, yeah, terrible. It's funny, I talked to myself about it, which was really quite nicely. Anyway, at the same time, the place where they're living is under occupation by a conquering nation state. So, if you can imagine, I don't know, Afghanistan, nothing except Afghanistan wasn't controlled by the Russians and the Americans, they both tried. Juristan, anyway, in this story, the young girl has older parents. And the older parents want to provide for her life. And as is the culture, that means arranging for her a suitable marriage with a man that they believe will take care of her and will protect her and provide for her. And as is common in this culture, the man they choose is notably older. So, at a young age, they arrange with a fellow that when she comes of age, she will become his wife. This is perfectly normal, and nobody thinks really perhaps that much of it. But these parents also want more for their daughter. And so, in a culture where there isn't schools, the only really seats of learning become the religious institutions. And one gains some skills, some sort of education, serving in the temples or the synagogues or the mosques or whatever you call them in this country. And it is common for children, it is common for selected children or allowed children to go off and spend some time serving in the temple, doing things there, and being exposed to some sort of education, at least in their religion. And this girl's family are really quite God-fearing. But as I said, they are older, and this is their only child. Only child? Maybe it's not their only child. Anyway, the young girl, there is a tradition that says when the time comes to go and serve in the temple, that the girl ran up the steps. She was eager to enter into this new life. And so she goes to work in this place. And as is common in all of these places, they're really ruled over by men of position, and position by a lot of their status. The high priest, of the priestly class, novitiates, people who've taken vows of abstinence, of some sort of description, alcohol, the Catholic Church, sex. And this girl comes to be there and is dutiful. She's also very pretty, very, very pretty, and on the cusp of womanhood. It is here that she will experience instruction, where she will experience the first yearnings, I guess, of sexuality. And what happens to her there is those who are in control and who have position and are proud of having a position see her and become desirous of her. And a grooming starts. It's flathead. Religion, of course, is fairly superstitious. It boasts a long, proud tradition, but lots of what's the word you want? Lots of myths have become involved in it. They're not all myths. Some of them are memories that have just become distorted and grown into myths. What is true is that the religion has become a religion and not quite the same as a faith anymore. And the traditions have become important. And that leniency which we give to those of position which we would not allow others to have. I tend to think of Bill Wyman and Mandy, how he was allowed to marry that very young girl, but then Elvis did the same to himself. And nobody thought anything of it. And yet what is absolutely true is it was an old man and a very young girl. That was probably less so, he probably wasn't very mature. Anyway, they come to the girl and they flatter her and they tell her she is meant for great things. And these great things are going to come through her surrendering herself to the hierarchy. This is what God wants. He wants her to take on this special duty. Duty. Secret duty. Looking out for the clergy. Maybe it's just one person. I know that when I read it, I see a grooming event. And I don't know how grooming works as well. I know that if we look at Rochester, it was quite obviously that the Muslim taxi drivers were grooming young girls. I think it's probably fairly easy for a young girl to buy into people's visions. And being young, of course, you don't have the ability to tell fact and fantasy quite so much. And that sense of morality that we carry into later life isn't developed. You can do things when you're 14, 13, 14, without a thought of how you may feel about it in later life. You find that in later you're quite horrified that you involve yourselves in things that you can look back and see an evil in it. Certainly there was a couple of girls at school who ended up with poor reputations, who were certainly maybe they were looking for love in the wrong places. Maybe they were just wanting acceptance. Maybe they just wanted maybe they just enjoyed what was happening in fairness. Anyway, to cut a longer story short, I don't like to cut a long story short. I actually want to take this out and make it a real event. We know that churches involve themselves in doing. We know that they were able to keep things secret and unspoken. Not actually unknown, which is really the odd thing. Although no one speaks about them and no one knows them, the truth is they are sort of known. I think of Jimmy Savile on the BBC. Mike once said to me, he used to direct productions for the BBC. It was known around the BBC, and people would say things, you want your children to go on Jim will fix it. I don't think you should. People actually know, it's just never spoken about, and it's sort of ignored and put under the carpet and everyone assumed. And because of their position and their power, people are afraid to go up against them. But that doesn't mean it's not. There's always the people around the place who do know. Perhaps cleaners have an idea. You know, the people who are there but not really in any position to affect anything, and who are easily removed. Can I pause this now? Can I pause it? There we go. June. I wonder if I can go back and play a little bit of it. I can't remember exactly where I stopped. I don't actually know where I remember. I just wanted to make a coffee in a small time. I've forgotten exactly where I was at. I'm pretty comfortable we got to the idea that this young girl, a pretty young girl, goes to accepts this honour to be a servant, goes there, thinking it's all sweetness and light, and falls foul of darker forces. But it's not a case so much of her being abused so that she understands it. What we do know from the story is that she's accepting of it. She may even enjoy it you know, I'm going to suggest that it's not a one-off event. That you know, this is a case of, but rather a case of a grooming and then a period of abuse that doesn't necessarily seem abusive. In fact, she may even feel valued or what does happen though is that at some point she becomes pregnant, and now there is a problem. And the problem is really one where this, and I'm going to suggest that it's systemic abuse, that it's not necessarily the only time this has ever happened, that the players have reasonably practiced at their abuse in the way that any serial abuser becomes practiced. They tell me that in America, the average age to enter into prostitution is 14. And that, you know, so the grooming of very young girls is obviously a really common thing. And the way you enter into this, in any case, this girl comes pregnant. And it is likely that this abuse could be exposed. And as what happens when powerful people are threatened, they can turn the forces against the victim. There was a case some years back in, I think it was with jury stand. There's two cases that I'm going to mention because, and I use them because what I'm really talking about is a story that's actually a true story. And when I say true, I mean the events are events that really do happen in the world. I'm just putting them all into this one child's life. So from a jury stand, what happened is a young girl was gang raped by a, you know, and I picked the jury stand simply because it is a society where the religion is the law. That can be quite brutal to people who it turns against. I remember Mary once telling me, quite matter of fact, she said, and we'd seen something happen. She said, "Oh, nobody behaved like that on my island." I said, "Why?" And she said, "There's too many stones." And she was actually talking about people being stoned to death. And I was like, really quite shocked. You know, I mean, I knew it was a little island, I knew it was remote, I knew that a lot of the modern things weren't there. But the idea of this being a type of vigilante justice, over the years I've talked to her, and, you know, she's talked to me about things where, you know, terrible things happened. Nobody did anything. There were no police, and the person who had done it really wasn't brought to account for their actions. Anyway, so suddenly this young girl is an embarrassment. And her parents are also people of, well, they're good people and really no position. No position at all. And with this pregnancy comes other things too, because Mary is betrothed. She is promised to someone. The perpetrators, if caught, are not only abusers, they are adulterers. And in this culture, adultery is a cardinal sin. It is not a sin, mortal sin, because
It's a sin, the sin of betrayal, as Jordan Peterson puts it. Betrayal is the most, what do you say, most devastating of the things that happen to a human. And the reason being is that betrayal changes not only the whole future, all the things you believed and look forward to are no longer there. But it also changes the entire past. All the things you believed in and you stood on have been taken out from under your feet. Anyway, powers that be rise up against the child, make accusations against them, stir up people against this child. They're probably looking for have everything swept under the carpet if the girl is judged an adulteress, a wanton, a strumpet. She can be disposed of by the public. She can be, the mob justice can happen. They can stir up that idea that, if you like, the demon lives amongst us and we must destroy it. So they're going to and the girl is more else. Perhaps she was even affectionate towards the abusers or believed in them. But now she's pregnant. That which she thought was there is swept away from her. She realizes that she has been deceived and used and abused. And her heart turns against the child within her. And this would have been, say, common in places like, say, Bosnia, where in the Bosnian War, rape was definitely a weapon that was used. And a lot of young girls. And they tended to be the pretty ones. As a general rule, rape is probably practice more against the beautiful than the plain and ugly. And her heart turns against the child. And her parents discover this thought told, and they're fearful for their daughter, although she has done wrong in their eyes. They're still their child. And public opinion in the village where they live, in the small community where they are, turns against her. The parents, in an effort to protect her, perhaps, to rescue her from mob justice, get the child and spirit her away to another village some distance off. Possibly at this point the child still to a sister or a sister-in-law. Whose husband is also a member of this religion, not a member of this community or this church or this diocese, if you like. And it's the best thing to do is just to remove her from the situation. And they send her off to this elderly aunt, whose husband also happens to be a priest. And the elderly aunt, it's been barren throughout her marriage. And as in many of these cultures do, they have this idea that children are a blessing. If you have many children, you are blessed by God. If you are barren, you're somehow cursed by God. And so they send her off to this auntie for safekeeping, for protection, I guess. Whilst they have to deal with the situation at home, to live down the shame. Hang on, that's my chicken to go on, so I'm going to come back to this story later.